And as always in Talk2Connect, we want to bring focus to the people at the very center of this topic. And today we will listen to Bernadette from Cameroon, and we will also listen to a woman from Uzbekistan. There you see some pictures, some of the upcoming story we will show you later on today. And then for the second part, we have Senior Migration Consultant Joris Kennis, who will introduce the discussion that you all will be able to take part in as we divide you into smaller groups. We call these breakout rooms. And you are familiar with that by now. Maybe you have a picture showing that. Yes, this is what happens after the break, that you will be divided into groups, and Joris Kennis will be your facilitator for the discussion. All right, but that is for further down the road after a short break around 1:30. All right, let's start with you, Katie Kashminder from the University of Amsterdam, and that is also where you are today, right? Welcome to Talk2Connect, Katie.
Thanks very much, Lisa.
You and I have been talking about these challenges that faces women upon return and reintegration, and we will get back to that, but I know you want us to take a step back and consider not only the gender-specific reasons why women migrate in the first place, but also what female migrants might experience during migration. So already before the return counselling can start, we have a general knowledge of women in migration. And please tell us, what do you as a researcher know already?
Yes, thank you very much. So we know already that the reintegration process is very much influenced by the entire migration cycle. So it matters why people have left their country, and it matters the experiences they've had in their journey to get to the destination country, then in the destination country, and then of course in the return process. So when we consider for women, there are often gender-specific reasons why women migrate in the first place. And this could be that instances such as domestic violence or other forms of gender-based violence. It could be to escape an early or a forced marriage. It could be problems with in-laws in the home living environment. Or it could be that they're unable to access educational opportunities in their country that are unavailable to women. So all of these gender-specific reasons for migration suggest that in the return, there will also still be challenges in these areas that need to be considered. And we also know that during the migration journey, women, and in particular women who are migrating alone, are often highly vulnerable to gender-based violence during the migration journey. So we have seen in one study that 51% of respondents in EU reception facilities reported experiencing gender-based violence within the last year. So 51% is quite a high proportion. And further to this, we've also...
Yeah, that is just an image we're showing here just to reflect this, that you are saying that it is, every second woman that might have a really severe experience from gender-based violence, according to your studies, once we meet them in the return counselling. That is important to keep in mind. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, and with this 51%, I think it's also really important to find that in a research study by Ines Kagnat in Belgium, she found that in Belgium and the Netherlands that there was a high prevalence also of gender-based violence occurring in asylum reception facilities, which I think is also quite shocking. So this is not something that just might happen on the journey. It can also happen in the destination country. And the perpetrators were most commonly their ex-partners or asylum professionals. So this is also an issue in the sense that women often do not disclose these experiences. There are several reasons that they do not disclose them, including shame, fear of retaliation, for instance, that it might impact their asylum case, or that they might be refused or deported if they disclose this type of information. So these types of experiences can really lead to vulnerabilities. And we see that women, when they start the return and reintegration process, or when they start at pre-departure, may have been through several traumatic experiences, and they might not have disclosed them or discussed them at all with anybody until that point. And therefore, we really consider that there might be quite a few lasting consequences from those events that can impact their behavior and that can also impact their return and reintegration.
Yeah. So these lasting consequences like unwanted pregnancies, disease transmissions, or lasting mental health issues, we will get back to that. But you also remind us, what I hear you say is that there are really no safe spaces, or quite few safe spaces for women during migration. Even in, like you mentioned, even in asylum receptions, there might occur harassments, which means that you, as a counsellor, always need to be very attentive to these things. But before we move on to the return process, let's take a look at the numbers for female returnees out of Europe.
Yes.
So this is last year's numbers.
Yes, so this is from last year, and this is the number of return orders in the EU. So these are people, of course, then given a return order that is issued to them that they need to leave the European Union. And we can see that only 13% of return orders issued were issued to women, that the majority were then really issued to men.
But this doesn't, I mean, it is more men that migrate in the first place, but this doesn't really reflect the distribution of asylum seekers, right? When they're entering EU, it's a smaller proportion of women that gets a return order. How's that?
Yes, that's right. So in last year, 29% of asylum applications filed in the EU were from women. So there's a higher percentage, almost 1/3, that are filing, but there's a much lower percentage returns. And I think that, of course, with these numbers, there's always time lag. So it's hard to say exactly within 1 year what has happened. But I think that there are also different reasons for this. I think that again, this is an average over the EU, but some countries within the EU have specific provisions for women. So, for example, in Italy, there is humanitarian permits, and humanitarian permits can be granted based on gendered vulnerabilities to women, such as women that are pregnant or have newborn babies, have experienced abuse in Libya, or are traveling alone with children. They're often granted a stay permit on those humanitarian grounds.
Yeah, let's take a look. Sorry, Katie, we have a picture prepared showing the distribution from a couple of EU countries. And as you said, Italy, you mentioned, we see here it's only 8% due to those national legislation. We also see a very low number of female return orders out of France. Is it would it be that women in general, maybe because they are considered a vulnerable group, that they have easier to get their asylum application accepted?
So I wouldn't say, I think that asylum applications, generally I wouldn't say that it should be easier. There are some gender-specific reasons for receiving asylum, such as female genital mutilation or specific forms of persecution that can occur based on the basis of gender, can be a reason to receive asylum. And then it also depends on other processes and procedures in the country. So, for example, the case of humanitarian permits in Italy is quite unique. It's not a refugee status. It's a different status, a stay on humanitarian grounds that is specifically allowed for different reasons. And one of those reasons is for these gendered reasons. So it depends quite a bit on the member state and what policies and procedures they have that would then lead to somebody being put into a return process and being issued a order to return. I think I think that there is a question here when we look at this data as to why is it so different across the EU member states, and what is happening that this percentage is so much higher in the Netherlands and Sweden than it is in France. And I think it would need some further investigation.
Let's take a look at the picture again. Sorry, Katie, I interrupted you. It went by quite quickly. Let's take a look at the picture again. Yeah. So we see the percentage, and for sure, I mean, it differs, and in all cases, what is evident is that female returnees is not standard. I mean, that is the exception, right?
Yes.
That was the question I wanted to ask. Is it? Do you think that is reflected in awareness of how to counsel upon female returnees? The fact that they are quite, I mean, rare compared to male returnees.
Yeah, so I think that there's an increasing awareness of gender specifications in programs of practice today, but I don't think that we're right now at a stage where we yet have specific policies necessarily for women within reintegration processes that is sort of the standard and is across all cases and programs. Sometimes there are specific provisions for women, especially when they're considered as vulnerable, but it's not a standard. So I think this is something that can be aspired towards, is to have gendered specific reintegration policies and gender sensitive policies and programs that enables particular care for a woman dependent on the situation they're in.
Mm-hmm. And just to complete the picture we're trying to paint here, let's take a look at the countries most common for return, countries of origin as well, leaving EU in 2022. So this is, as we can see, I mean, Iraq on the top of the list. Otherwise, it's not any huge differences between these countries. But so what can be said about these countries of origin out of a gender perspective?
So I think from a gender perspective, one of the first things that I would note when looking at this is that most of these countries, women are migrating with families, and it's not women migrating on their own, with the exception being Nigeria. So from Nigeria, we know that women frequently migrate on their own. But frequently when we talk about Serbia, Albania, Turkey, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, women are generally migrating more commonly than in family groups than on their own. And I think that is something also that should be considered as a bit of a difference. Women are more vulnerable generally when they migrate on their own than when they're migrating in the family group, not always. But that is one of the differences that I do see with these countries.
And you touched upon this, but just to reconnect with how we started during the migration journey, on the departure from home country, during the migration journey, and then when we as return counselors meet a female returnee, what could you say something about what kind of challenges they are facing at that point? Of course, on a general level. According to your research, what's in the mind of a female returnee, so to speak, when we meet them?
I think that the situation, I think, can often be similar to male returnees, but I think that generally there's a lot of fear, of course, and a lot of uncertainty, with people being uncertain about what's going to happen to them, of course, when they return. But I think that there's just the need to have an awareness that women may have experienced traumas, they might have vulnerabilities that they haven't discussed or they're not disclosing, and they might not want to discuss them, and that there shouldn't be, I think, a pressure to do so. But understanding that they might be coming from this type of a background is an important starting place. And then thinking about what that would mean for the return and what are the specific elements they need for their return preparedness. And particularly for women who may have left a bad marriage or a situation that they don't want to return to, what are some of the ways then that they can be supported with their reintegration without going back to that family, or with finding sort of other solutions for them?
Yeah. Many possible concerns for sure. Thank you, Katie. Stay there because I'll get back to you, but I also want to introduce our next guest, Marie-Stella Ndiaye. Welcome. You are located in Gambia. You work as a program manager for assisted voluntary return and reintegration at IOM. And you are, of course, welcome to Talk2Connect. And you also work with identifying challenges for female returnees. I just wonder, you heard what Katie said. Is there something you think should be added out of your perspective in terms of challenges women are facing, or did she cover the most essential parts?
Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. I think she does capture most of the challenges, but I think we also need to add maybe on the top of that, just maybe the economic opportunities in terms of labor division once they are back to their country of origin, because it's not only about the traditional or the cultural situation that might cause the mental distress, but we need to emphasize also how they are facing the economic reintegration because of the limited opportunities, or maybe in terms of education for women, which is not very often addressed. And as she was also mentioning, if we are talking about return, we talk about return in a community or in the family. How are we dealing with the stigma, with the discrimination, and also how we can offer alternative in terms of accommodation or shelter, just to handle at least that community acceptance, but also just for them also to have the psychological support before engaging with their families and the communities. So that's just the 2 points I wanted to add on top of it.
It adds up. And IOM is, of course, a well-known organization to everyone watching. You are present in over 100 countries, and you support return and reintegration from policy to ground level. And then relevant for today's topic is that you promote a gender-inclusive approach in all your activities. And I mean, I hear that you mentioned the broad field already, but could you say something about what that means, a gender-inclusive approach, just to give us an idea?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I would just start by saying that IM has been working, to be honest, to develop a pool of tools and policy. So all our work is based on what we call the protection policy, but also how we specifically work on the reintegration handbook. That handbook will look at 3 dimensions when we talk about reintegration, which also apply for women. The economic dimension, the social, which comprise the housing, the medical support, but also the accommodation. And then you have the psychosocial support, which is more challenging, knowing the context in Africa in terms of apprehension to provide this kind of services. And then when you look at the reintegration process, we need to look at 3 levels. The individual level, which is more related to the migrants itself, in terms of how we can support among the 3 dimensions I mentioned earlier, but then also how you can include the community in the reintegration process, and more importantly, how you work at the structural level, because sometimes what is missing is the connection between what we want to provide in terms of support and how it can fit to the general context of the country of origin. So for the women, we try to develop, as I was mentioning, different tools which start from the counseling even before they return in their country. In that tool, you need to make sure that you assess the vulnerabilities, but what are the needs? Because we believe that for each migrants, there is a very tailored approach. Even though you can have guidance in general, you need to focus more on the, it should be a person-centered approach in terms of reintegration. When you talk about the women, for example, just to give you one example on the field, usually we will think about providing trainings and see how they can be reintegrated in the labor market. But what we notice is when they are back and they go to their traditional role in terms of handling the house situation, having children, how they can find time to go to follow a training. So you need to make sure that you design some of the support to accommodate this societal role, if I can say that. And for example, it can be basic things like providing childcare while they can do the trainings, or to design the training in a way that in terms of timeline, they can participate without having impact.
Yeah.
And it go even sometimes beyond the individual, where you engage the community, because they might not understand why a woman will be doing some type of work. For them, it's more a male job or this kind of thing. So you need to also work at the community level and structural level in terms of labor division and how to better provide the support for the woman.
Yeah.
Just to give an example on this one.
Multidimensionality, you call it, this approach. But we have prepared another example of your work. You have made a case movie, and we're going to take a look at that. We meet Bernadette, who's a woman who migrated, but later returned to her home country of Cameroon. Let's take a look at her story.
Je pense que j'ai déjà la paix, j'ai retrouvé surtout l'emplacement pour mes activités. Moi, c'est Bongambi Bernadette Edith. Alors, c'est une amie qui m'a parlé du voyage. Alors, si je sors dehors du pays, je peux travailler mes ongles là-bas. C'est comme ça qu'elle m'a encouragée. Mais quand j'entre en route, je constate que c'est pas ça. C'est comme ça que j'ai été découragée. Moi, j'ai dit, je signe ma députation, je rentre. En même temps, quand je perds l'enfant, on découvre que j'ai un début de myome. Donc, c'était pas facile pour moi. Je dois être trop parce qu'il n'y a personne. Je dois être forte. Je suis obligée d'être forte.
Je suis Herman Gogo, département protection, ici à l'OIM Cameroun. Nous avons plusieurs types d'assistance que nous apportons en fonction des cas. Donc chaque assistance que nous apportons est adaptée aux besoins de la personne. Pour son cas, il fait question d'aller faire une consultation et le médecin traitant devait donner faire poser d'abord un diagnostic. Ce n'était vraiment pas un bon point. Il fallait parler avec le médecin pour savoir qu'elle avait un problème. Elle a aussi bénéficié de beaucoup d'activités sociales, beaucoup plus, donc maintenir un contact tous les 2 jours. Et durant ces séances, justement, on les briefe sur l'identification des signes de détresse et sur la gestion du stress lui-même. Nous avons aussi fourni un petit peu d'éducation pour savoir comment elle devra facilement développer sa résilience face à cette situation. Et je crois que chaque mois, nous faisons une évaluation de ses besoins psychosociaux pour savoir si l'assistance que nous apportons est adaptée à cette situation.
J'ai eu les idées que seulement pour les ongles, ça ne me sera pas facile. Parce que j'ai produit toutes les clientes et puis j'ai changé d'endroit. Pourquoi ne pas ajuster le petit maillot parce que je suis au bord de la mer. C'est comme ça que j'ai commencé à ajuster.
Donc les détails de son projet ont été évoqués avec les conseils d'association de la jeunesse. C'est une fois il y a le projet mis en place qu'ils sont venus faire justement le suivi.
Quand je suis rentrée, j'avais d'abord honte parce que je n'avais pas de moyens. Je ne savais pas par où commencer. Les moyens même, je n'avais pas. Même pour manger, ce n'était pas facile.
Là-dessus, nous aider les migrants à faire face à la stigmatisation et au sentiment de rejet de la communauté. Dès leur arrivée, nous avons instauré les centres de psycho-éducation. Une fois qu'ils reviennent, comme on dit souvent au quartier chez nous, avec les mains vides, le regard de la société. Parce qu'en partant, il avait promis un duplex et des gros cylindres à son retour. Mais là, il revient avec un plastique de OEM. Donc, c'est pas évident.
Parce qu'il n'y a personne qui ne veut pas un avenir meilleur. On espère tous qu'il y ait un petit soleil demain.
So this was a case film from IOM, and Marie-Stella, we saw clearly that Bernadette in the movie, she got help once she was back in Cameroon, but I know you believe European counsellors play a key role as well, and can you expand a bit on that?
Yes, sure. For us, the reintegration component cannot be detached from the return process. And when you talk about return, which means that there is a pre-departure counseling that can be offered from the country where they are. Of course, we are aware of the sometimes the difficulty, because when you talk about the forced return on the voluntary return, you need as a counselor to first build the trust between you and the migrants. That's the first step. And we think that the counselor in European countries play a key role. They are the first one at the front line providing accurate information on the return and the reintegration process. So from that stage, they should be able to cover two things mainly. The counseling in terms of what will be the reintegration look like at the economic level, what are the possibility in the country of origins, in terms of services the migrant can have access to once back. And second, how they can already create the link between the migrants and the community. And that can be done through, for example, what we call the virtual counseling. So the virtual counseling basically will allow the migrant to talk to a counselor, of course, with the support of the counselor in Europe, in the country of origin, who is more aware about the national context, who is sometimes more familiar in terms of cultural attachment and how to talk with the migrants. And for the European consular, it's just to make sure that you can assess from that starting point the different vulnerabilities and the needs. And you can go even further by providing the psychosocial support, because that's something you can already offer before they return. So it can at least minimize the risk of distress that is already there for the migrants. So I think it's a very key role they are playing to facilitate the reintegration process later on.
And also, sometimes, you said this to me earlier, it's good to know your limits. I mean, you don't have to know everything as a counselor. I mean, the important thing is that you know that you can reach out for more information and try to bridge the pre and post departure. The tools you were mentioning, you have a whole bunch of material available on your website if you want to look into the handbooks, and you also have films showing how some of these tools may be used. I'm going to get back to you, Marie-Stella, but I also want to give place for our third guest, calling in from Pakistan. And you know, Pakistan is one of the most populated countries in the world, also one of the most discriminating towards women, despite recent legislation aiming to fight gender-based violence, for instance. Many Pakistani women experiences their human rights being violated. And the Development and Reintegration Organization WELDO has offices all over the country and is currently partnering with Frontex and the government of 18 European countries. Very welcome to Talk2Connect, Ms. Sijal Aziz.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are Director for Research, Return and Reintegration Program at WELDO, and you are currently in Islamabad. And you have been supporting over 14 1,000 returnees from Europe these last 12 years, 10% of them being women. And can you explain to us what these women, these Pakistan women, face when they return to their home country?
Well, the first thing I would say is that return does not take place in a bubble. So they went from Pakistan to Europe and they're coming back to Pakistan as well. So there is a society that is going to be around them. When they come back to Pakistan, they are going to face the same issues that they had faced earlier, but this time they're going to be more stark challenges as before. For a woman who comes back to Pakistan, if she's a single mother, for example, she will face the issues of having good education for her kids. If she has younger children who don't go to school, she will have the issues of having nanny care for them. She will definitely face the issues of good transport options in Pakistan. Because the transport options currently in Pakistan are not that gender sensitive or not that women friendly, I would say. Although there are options, but still they don't take you to your place of business. She will have to have accommodation because although the male returnees come back to their wives, their parents, their brothers and sisters, they already have a home that they can live in. But for the female returnees, it's not the case. They sometimes are either their husbands have died or have to divorce them, and then they come back and have to start with all the options that they have. And the issue is the reintegration assistance is uniform for everyone. Whether it is a woman returning with 3 kids, whether it's a male returnee who's coming back to Pakistan alone. So if you look at the woman returnee, she will have to think about setting up a business, have to think about getting a safe accommodation for her kids and herself, has to think about education for her kids, has to think about nanny care while she is running a business, has to think about either doing the job or running a business. So she has much more, so she has more integration needs than as compared to male returnees. The male returnees will not face the problem of accommodation as such as the female returnees.
Right.
But the female returnees will definitely face so if they're coming back alone.
Yeah, so many challenges you're describing. And what can you as a local service provider do? What do you offer at Weldo for these women?
Well, what we try to do is first we try to provide them with psychosocial support if they are under some sort of psychological, if they're going through a psychological trauma. But that support is not long term. So that is a short term support that we can provide to them. Secondly, we can and we do provide a platform for all these women so they can sit together and identify resources that they can pool together. For example, a woman returnee who is living in a specific area can do a carpool with another returnee who is also living in close to that particular area, and then both of them can go together to their place of business if they're at a good distance from each other. Just to give you a small example, under one of the FGDs, we had 2 female who had come back to a particular city in Pakistan, where there are a lot of issues for women returnees. So specifically with reference to accommodation. So while they were in the FGD, and the FGD was not based at provision of accommodation or provision of facilitating the accommodation services. So while they were sitting in the FGD, they talked together during the coffee break and the tea break, and then they found out that we are both living in the same area and we can both get the same accommodation at a local house. So they were able to pool resources and get that accommodation. So us as a service provider, we've been learning over the past 12 years of how to do things. But sometimes, we see miracles happening. And although we play a role in assisting those returnees, themselves also play a role in assisting other returnees as well with specific mentions of accommodation, starting up a business together, mentoring other returnees and starting businesses. So it's like women are also coming back to the same things, coming back to the same society, but they have different issues, specifically in our setup.
But a female network seems to be a key, one key solution that you have found to create that network. And of course, you mentioned to start with, all the structural problems of the country of Pakistan. You also mentioned that you find the European reintegration programs too uniform to fit both men and women. The councillors watching now will not be able to design the programs, but if you were to send a message to them, what do you think could be done on a counselling part out of Europe to help the Pakistan women returning?
Well, it's on the counselling part, I would say involve the partners in the country of origin more. They know more about the situation in Pakistan as compared to anybody sitting there in their country. Same is the case. Somebody will know more about their country as compared to people who are living in Pakistan. So it works both ways. So just to give you a small example, under one of our projects, I was talking about the proposal. It was at the proposal stage, and I was talking about provision of job placement services for returnees in Pakistan. And the person who was going through the proposal was raising different questions, the person from the partner agency. And he said, why can't the local job placement agencies provide them with jobs? Why do you provide them with jobs? So I had to tell him there are no local job placement agencies in Pakistan. Also, the councillors think that that's a common consensus, not just within the councillors, within the project developers as well as other people who are engaged in the project at the development phases. That there's going to be a research study somewhere, there's going to be a study that's going to be launched that's going to tell them which business will work, which business will not work. But if we look at the returnees, they come back to Pakistan on a micro level. They go and settle in a village where there are no chambers of commerce, where the main economic situation of Pakistan is not going to matter, where the local knowledge is going to matter more. So involving the local partner, the local reintegration partner in the country of origin will make a lot more sense, not just for the women returnees, for the male returnees as well, so that they can be properly reintegrated before they even come back to Pakistan at the return counselling level. So
bridge, open the bridge.
More rapid. Yeah.
Thank you,
yes, exactly.
Sijal. Please stay with us. And now I'm going to let in the other panelists as well there you are, all three of you, Katie Kushminder, Maurice Talandaya and Sijal Aziz, to open the floor for questions. It is more than welcome for you to send in your questions in the chat. The ones of you watching now who have any questions for our panelists, and we'll be happy to take them. We have my colleague Pernilla. You are monitoring the chat, and I can bring you in here and tell us, do we have any questions already? Pernilla, can you hear me? Yeah, no, well...
I'm here.
There you are, great. Yeah. You are monitoring the chat today, and we are inviting questions from the audience, so... Can you...
Yes, we actually got a question here for Sijal Aziz from Waldo. So I think I address that first. And that is, how is the situation for families with kids returning in Pakistan?
You heard that question, Sijal? The situation for...
Yes, I did. So it differs from place to place. So we have several areas in Pakistan that are really underdeveloped. We have other areas that are developed as well. So it depends upon the children who are coming back, the age of the children as well. So and also how long they have been staying there in Europe. So if you have kids that, just take Germany for example, if you have kids living in Germany for the past 5 or 6 years and they speak perfect German language, then it will be difficult for them to reintegrate into Pakistan within 1 year of coming back, because they will have to then learn the English language, that is the medium of exchange in some of the schools, or Urdu language, that is the medium of exchange in most of the schools. So it will depend upon the family and the structure of the family to know, and specifically the geographical area where they're coming back to know how much successful that reintegration is going to be, and how the situation is going to be on ground here.
Yes, and it was also quite of a similar question there. How do you support women in these families, in families with kids?
Well, the women who are coming back with their husbands and with their kids in a single family unit, they are supported under the JRS project as part of the funding that is allowed for a family. I would say there aren't any additional programs that will specifically go towards helping women in reintegrating back into the society. What we have seen over the years is that if women come back with their husbands and with their kids, or even women who come back with their husbands, they mostly like to enter a reintegration, for example, business. When they want to come back to Pakistan, they start a business, but they mostly invest their money in the business that their husbands want to run, and then the husbands are mostly running that business. So it's women play a passive role when they're coming back with the family. We had one very wonderful family in which there was this girl who was actually the daughter. She was around 17 years of age and about to be 18. She was 18 years of age. She was eligible for her own reintegration assistance, and she did not want to start anything with her parents or the rest of the family members. She wanted to start her own business. So we enjoyed supporting her a lot. What we did was we offered different business options for her. What businesses can she invest in? What business options are there in her particular locality? How many people in her locality have opened up a particular business? How much profit are they earning? And a number of things like that. So mostly, I would say women do not invest their time and I would say resources into running their own businesses. They rather started with their husbands if they're coming back as a family unit. And some of them do that if they're coming back as single women or single mothers, but not the women who are coming back in a family unit.
Pernilla, I will let you look through the chat again, but I see that there is one question that touches upon a short movie that I'd like to show you, namely, what do you do as a counsellor when there is no reintegration support in place in the country of origin? And we have met with a Uzbekistan woman who received an order to leave, and she needs to return to her country of origin, Uzbekistan. And her reason to migrate was an abusive and violent husband. And in this case, the return counsellor has not been able to find any reintegration support for her in Uzbekistan. So that is the situation, and let's listen to her.
Kelgan yillarimdagi qo'rquv bor yana. To'g'risi hozir nima deyishni ham bilmayman. Men tupikka kirib qolganman, chunki qaytib borganimda nima bo'ladi? Yana o'sha oldingi hayot qaytarilishi aniq. Chunki yerda men уже tinch xotirjam yashay olmayman. Hayotimga xavf bo'lishini doim bilib yashash bu juda ham qo'rqinchli. Qaytib borganimdan keyin men yana o'sha qo'rquvda, yana o'sha taqiqlar ostida har xil yana do'q-po'psalar, har xil o'lim xavfi kamiga. Bu bitta menga nisbatan emasda, bitta o'z bolalarimni ham hayoti turibdi o'rtada. O'shaning uchun qaytib ketishimizni eshitib, ular ham juda ham hozir qo'rquvda, umuman ketishni xohlashmayapti.
Kommer du få stöd från familj, släkt eller någon organisation när du återvänder?
Qarindoshlarim yordam bera olmaydi hech qanaqasiga. Biror bir tashkilotda oldin men eshitib qilganimda yordam berisha olmagan. Keyin boshqa men yana yordam bera oladigan tashkilotni bilmayman u yoqda. lekin men o'ylashimcha mani vaziyatimda yordam berisha olmaydi. Xohlaydigan narsa menga shu yerda qolib ikkita bolam bilan tinchgina yashashimga ruxsat berishligisini xohlardim. Men qo'rquv ostida yashashdan уже charchadim. Men tinch hayotda qo'rquvlarsiz. Chunki bu juda ham qiyin. Na odam xotirjam uxla oladi, na xotirjam bir ish qila oladi. Ayol kishi bo'lganim uchun bizani u yoqda urf-odatlar bo'yicha ayol kishi baribir ayol kelin degan narsalar, tushunchalar уже oxirgi o'rinda turadi. O'shanga imенно ayol kishi bo'lganim uchun
Oh, so that was a Uzbekistan woman who wants to stay anonymous, and she was interviewed by my colleague Pernilla. And so in this case, there's not much support in place, right? I'm turning to my panel here. Do you have any comments to this, Maristella and Daye? If I start with you, how would you?
I would say that.
Yeah.
No, just to agree that sometimes the intervention, it can be IM or any other structure. It's usually project-based, so you have a different type of eligibility, and sometimes you can have this kind of cases where you cannot fit them to any of this program. And that's why it's when I was saying earlier to link it with the structural level, it's to see at government level, but also the different NGOs in the country of origin, what type of support they can provide. That's one thing. And second, usually depending on the assessment and the vulnerability assessment that is done in the country of destination, if there is a risk in terms of security of life threatened, you cannot send back the person to their country of origin because there is a evidence-based risk. And in that case, as a consular, you need to look at the different options other than sending that person back to their country of origin. So it should be done in the safely and dignified manner. If not, it should not be the case.
Katie Kushminder, do you have any thoughts from watching this short clip?
I think that Maristella has said it very well, that safety should always be the first issue. And if it cannot be a safe and dignified return, then there needs to be a consideration of what are the other options. But if the return is deemed safe, then it has to be clear what the conditions are to provide for that safety, whether it's relocation to a separate city or some other provisions to ensure that the reintegration is safe.
And Sijal, this is not a Pakistan woman. There is not a WELDO in place in Uzbekistan that has been possible to reach out to in this case. I know that you want to promote WELDO here as well, and hopefully now everyone watching knows that if they have a Pakistan case, they could reach out to you. I mean, in the situations that when the councillor does not know of the fact that there is a reintegration support organization, what could have been done in this case? What are you thinking? What can be done instead? I mean, despite the absence of a reintegration, of a connection to the reintegration side.
Well, the first and foremost thing, the best thing to do is only send returnees back who are able to go back into a safe environment, number one. Number two, if there are no reintegration programs at home, then please don't send them home unless and until you can get in touch with civil society there that is working on different projects for women, for vulnerable women, and different projects that have different programs for women. The government has different programs for women that you can already put those women into prior to their returns. Don't let them go. So regarding WELDO, of course, I'd love to promote it. So we will be having, very soon Frontex will be starting services in Uzbekistan as well. So hopefully during the next year, this issue may not be there, as well as some other countries where the reintegration options are not available.
Questions keep coming in from you who are watching. Pernilla, you or me to toss another question at the panel? All right, I do it. So, yeah, key aspects that case officers should identify during the pre-departure counseling. We touched a bit upon this, but are there things that are usually overlooked and that are really key in this meeting? Maristella, you have any thoughts on this?
I think we touched base on it earlier, but I think the vulnerability, because sometimes we are really, let's say, because we receive also this, when we talk about the first return, sometimes that component is overlooked in a sense that we don't enough assess the vulnerability of the psychological status of that person going back to their country of origin. If we talk to women specifically, sometimes we also forget about the national context they will going back to, and we create a kind of hope in terms of return and reintegration that might not align to the national policy or the national traditions or culture. So I will say that we really need to be careful to not give higher expectation to returnees, to be very accurate in terms of information we are sharing. We need to see how we can better include the communities and the family from the pre-departure to ease the reintegration process, and also to make sure that we have this intersectionality in terms of economic well-being, psychosocial, but also social, and not covering one aspect that might increase the distress of the person when coming back to their country.
Multidimensionality, as we said before. Yeah, we are about to. We shortly will go to the second part of this webcast. So I mean, we could go on with this for long, but so I think it's time to ask you all for some last takeaways. I mean, we heard now from Maristella. Katie Kashminder, do you have any last takeaway for the counselors watching now?
Well, thank you very much, Lisa, for the session. I think that we know that women have many vulnerabilities in their migration processes and their return and reintegration. So I think it's just, as said, taking a cautious approach to account for their vulnerabilities. And I think also as case managers trying to also advocate for their needs, that you're not always in a position, of course, to change the policies, but recording the situations and sharing the information upwards to try to ensure that in the future there are gender-specific policies for return and reintegration. As colleagues have said, that women need additional support in the reintegration process, sometimes with housing, with economic needs, with psychosocial, so that women can start to receive those extra supports when they're needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And Ms. Aziz, do you have any last takeaway for us?
Well, I would suggest that return counselors get in touch with the partner organizations in the countries of origin so that they can understand the gender dynamics of a case better. We have had cases where the women were suffering from psychological issues but not referred during the return counseling phase to us as somebody who's suffering from psychosocial support needs. So if there is some sort of synergy between the partner in the country of origin and the return counselors at the time when the person is being provided support, then the support will be much better, much more timely, and it will make much more sense and will be sustainable for the woman who's coming back to Pakistan as a single returnee or as part of a family.
Thank you all three of you for participating today and sharing your insights, which I can hear you have plenty of in this matter. And we have more questions. We'll see if maybe we can kindly ask you to help us answer these questions later on in the chat to those who sent them. But thank you for now. Katie Kashminder from University of Amsterdam, Marie-Stella Ndaye from IOM, and Ms. Sijal Aziz from the organization WELDO in Pakistan. We are moving on here in Talk2Connect. We go straight to Mr. Joris Kennis. Hello, welcome back.
Hello, Lisa.
You're going to facilitate the discussion that we will have shortly, but first I want to hear your reflections on this intense hour that we just had and everything that we've been listening to.
Well, Lisa, really, it was quite intense, and thank you so much for having me, and also for this beautiful lineup, because you're linking academic research with counselors and also with program management. So for me, it was very, very rich contributions I heard. Listening carefully to Katie, how she said there are gender-specific needs, but also gender-specific violence, and this in all stages, even before and during the migration, and also upon return, of course. And then the need of creating safe spaces. And I asked myself, how can we also as council create a safe space to address indeed the sensitive needs that women can have in case of return. And translating this also to the programs and European policy, what are the standards, and are they all enough gender specific when we speak about return of female migrants? And of course, the issue of safety on all levels. It was also nice to hear the voice of Marie-Stella, where she says it's not only about this psychological aspect, but also economic, having the support of economic and educational possibilities. And of course, this acceptance issue of the family, which we all know. So she interlinks these three well-known dimensions now, economic, social, psychological, into one maybe specific, gender-specific context where, of course, the country of origin also has a big influence. And then finally, I thought when I heard Celia, of course, Celia, it's not a bubble in which a return is happen. It is, of course, coming from a certain context and returning to a context. So she refers also to kind of strengths. Women can be very strong if you bring them together, if you say you try to create kind of connection and connectedness. So she also referred to the EU program and to involve partners in country of origin together with the partners pre-departure. So this interconnectedness of different persons who giving the support. So in my feeling, it was a very rich contribution of three of all, and of course we can jump with this valuable information to the two main questions we shall address in the breakout groups.
Yeah, and we will take a break shortly, but why don't you, Joris, go ahead and introduce the discussion and what the topic, the questions are, before we take the break.
Okay, well, Lisa, the first question a bit is, what are important steps that we as councillors can make when preparing the return of a female migrant? And these are steps, and we heard a lot of information already, what can be done pre-departure. And the second question is also an open question, and then we look a bit post-arrival, what specific elements could we take into account when we plan or implement our integration support for migrant women? Here we try a bit make the connection pre-departure to post-arrival support. So these are the two open questions. And I invite the breakout groups to talk about these questions, about your opinions, also about your experience. And of course, it's a quite open field, so you cannot work on everything, but at least provide us some ideas from your working reality.
Yeah, and so we will pick this up in breakout rooms as we get back. I think we need like 5 minutes to stretch our legs now, and then we reassemble here. You don't have to turn off your computer or anything, just leave it. And then we will facilitate the breakout rooms shortly. So see you in 5 minutes then, when it's 22:02.
Thank you.
Hello, Joris. Just about to make a conference call with you and the others.
Peter, here I am.
Okay, then you can mute your. Mute there. You can mute your microphone on Skype. Den här är mutad.
I continue.
All right. I hope you find your way back to this second part of the Talk2Connect, the webinar part, where we will discuss the questions introduced by you, Joris Kennis. And now it is time to transfer everyone into these breakout rooms. You can just stand by, and this will be facilitated from us. And the idea is to have a 30-minute long group discussion, and then we will reassemble, and you will help us sum up yours. And you will also cruise the groups, right? Tell us what your part will be.
That's right, Lisa. I will cruise to the groups. I will visit them short time. I hope that in every group they can assign a reporter. And again, just give us some key ideas on what you think about these two very open questions. This is a Talk2Connect session, so it's important that you talk to each other, that you find connection, also find connection with the ideas and the material that has been provided yet. So please go to your groups, and we see each other within 30 minutes. I will visit some of the groups. Thank you.
Joris, so I leave you again to Anton here.